An exhausted hotel employee struggles to support her daughter and keep her job. A mysterious millionaire watches her. Secrets are uncovered, betrayals emerge, and an unexpected twist puts everything at risk. When the whole truth is revealed, the woman's life changes forever. Before diving into this emotional story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more astonishing tales. The clock showed 11:45 p.m. when Mary Davis adjusted her name badge on her perfectly ironed uniform for the 10th time. Her eyes, framed by deep shadows, struggled to stay open as she observed the nearly empty lobby of the luxurious Ocean Star Hotel. The soft lights reflected on the marble floor, creating a welcoming atmosphere that contrasted with the whirlwind of worries in her mind. Mary took a deep breath, feeling the weight of another night of work. At 32, she was a woman of simple beauty, with brown hair always tied in a discreet bun, and honey-colored eyes that, despite their tiredness, still held a gleam of determination. Her light tan skin bore subtle marks of sleepless nights and constant stress. While organizing some papers at the reception desk, her thoughts flew to the small apartment in the suburbs, where her 7-year-old daughter, Sophie, slept under the care of a neighbor. The image of the girl with her rebellious curls and gap-toothed smile brought an involuntary smile to Mary's lips. It was for Sophie that she faced double shifts, sleepless nights, and the constant pressure of being a single mother. The soft sound of the elevator announced the arrival of a guest to the lobby. Mary straightened her posture, forcing a professional smile. A tall man about 40 years old emerged from the elevator. He wore an impeccable suit that screamed money and power. His penetrating blue eyes seemed to evaluate everything around him with a mixture of curiosity and impatience. "Good evening, sir. How may I help you?" Mary asked, her controlled voice hiding her exhaustion. The man approached the counter, his expensive cologne invading the space. "I need some information about nearby restaurants that are open at this hour." Mary nodded, turning to the computer. As she searched, she felt the weight of the man's gaze upon her. He was Richard Miller, one of the hotel's most important guests, a businessman known for his fortune and influence. She knew she needed to be especially attentive. "There are 3 excellent options, Mr. Miller," she began to explain, but a sudden wave of dizziness made her pause. She blinked several times, trying to focus her vision. The accumulated fatigue of weeks was taking its toll. Richard frowned, noticing the hesitation. "Is everything all right?" "Yes, I'm sorry," Mary replied quickly, forcing herself to continue. She detailed the restaurant options, but her voice sounded distant even to her own ears. As she spoke, her eyes grew heavy. Her vision blurred. The words became jumbled. In a moment of horror, Mary realized she was losing the battle against sleep. She tried to support herself on the counter, but it was too late. The world darkened. When Mary opened her eyes again, she felt a moment of panic. She was lying on the sofa in the staff break room, a blanket covering her body. She sat up abruptly, her heart racing. "Calm down, everything's fine," a male voice sounded beside her. It was Charlie, the night security guard, a middle-aged gentleman, with a gentle smile. "You fainted at the reception desk. The guest, Mr. Miller, called us." Reality hit her like a bucket of cold water. Mary covered her face with her hands, mortified. "My God, I fell asleep at work, in front of an important guest." Charlie placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Don't worry, child. Mr. Miller was very understanding. He even helped bring you here." Mary felt tears forming. All the exhaustion, worry, and fear she had been suppressing for the past few weeks threatened to overflow. "I'm going to lose my job, Charlie. How will I take care of Sophie? Her medications?" "Shh. Don't think about that now," Charlie gently interrupted her. "Rest a bit more. I'm covering the reception desk. We'll talk to management in the morning, okay?" Reluctantly, Mary nodded. As Charlie left, she leaned back on the sofa, letting silent tears fall. The image of Sophie, her cheerful laughter, echoed in her mind. How could she fail her daughter? Outside the break room, Richard Miller stood still, a thoughtful expression on his normally impassive face. He had witnessed the entire scene, the fainting, the genuine concern of her colleagues, and now the palpable fear of the young receptionist. Something in that scene touched him in a way he hadn't expected. The dedication of that woman, working to exhaustion, probably out of necessity. It was a reality far removed from his world of luxury and privilege. Richard walked slowly back to the lobby, his mind spinning. As he passed by the reception desk, something caught his attention. It was a photo half hidden behind the monitor, a smiling girl with rebellious curls hugging a teddy bear larger than herself. Next to the photo, a yellow post-it with hurried handwriting. "Pick up Sophie's medicine. Don't forget." In that moment, something changed inside Richard. The initial irritation at the employee's lack of professionalism transformed into a deeper understanding. This wasn't just a tired receptionist. She was a mother fighting with all her strength. Without thinking too much, Richard took a piece of paper and a pen. He hesitated for a moment, considering what he was about to do. It wasn't his custom to get involved in the lives of hotel staff he frequented, but something about this situation compelled him to act. With elegant handwriting, he wrote a brief message. "Your dedication is admirable. The path isn't always easy, but people like you make a difference. I hope this helps a little. Take care." Along with the note, he left a generous amount of money, enough to cover several months of medication, he imagined. Richard carefully folded the note, hiding the money inside, and placed it under the computer keyboard, where he knew Mary would find it the next morning. As he walked back to the elevator, Richard found himself reflecting on how much a small action could impact someone's life. For years, he had focused only on numbers, profits, and expansions. Perhaps it was time to look more closely at the people behind those numbers. The elevator arrived with a soft ding. Before entering, Richard cast one last look at the room where Mary was resting. A strange feeling invaded him, a mixture of compassion and curiosity. Something told him that this wouldn't be the last time their paths crossed. The elevator doors closed, taking Richard back to his luxurious suite. But his thoughts remained with the exhausted receptionist and her unknown daughter. As he prepared to sleep in his Egyptian cotton sheets, Richard couldn't help but think about the irony of the situation. He, who had always prided himself on his business vision, was only now beginning to see the true value of the people around him. On the other side of the hotel, Mary finally fell asleep, unaware that her life was about to change drastically. Fate sometimes has peculiar ways of uniting people from completely different worlds, creating connections that defy all expectations. The night advanced, silent and full of unspoken promises. At the Ocean Star Hotel, two worlds had collided, and the waves of this encounter were just beginning to form. The sun had barely risen when Mary awoke with a start on the break room sofa. For a moment she was disoriented, until memories of the previous night flooded her mind. Panic settled in her chest as she hurriedly got up, straightening her rumpled uniform. "My God, what time is it?" she muttered to herself, checking her wristwatch. 5:45 a.m. Her shift would end in 15 minutes, but she knew she needed to face the consequences of her fainting before leaving. With a heavy heart, Mary walked toward the reception desk. The lobby was quiet, only the soft sound of the decorative fountain breaking the early morning silence. As she approached her post, she noticed Charlie, the security guard, napping discreetly in a nearby armchair. She smiled, grateful for the kindness of her colleague who had covered her position during the night. Sitting in her chair, Mary turned on the computer, preparing to hand over to the next shift. It was then that she noticed something unusual under the keyboard, a carefully folded piece of paper. Intrigued, she picked it up and unfolded it. Her eyes ran over the elegantly written message, and her breath caught in her throat upon seeing the amount of money hidden inside. The tears she had suppressed the night before now flowed freely down her cheeks. "This can't be," she whispered, reading the note several times. The unexpected generosity left her stunned. That money would solve her most urgent problems, Sophie's, medications, overdue bills, even allow her to take a few days off to rest. As she tried to process what was happening, Mary heard footsteps approaching. Quickly, she wiped away her tears and hid the money in her purse, leaving only the note on the table. "Good morning, Mary." The sharp voice of Rebecca Winters, the hotel manager, cut through the air. "I see you're already up. Great, we need to talk." Rebecca was a middle-aged woman, always impeccably dressed, with short grey hair and sharp eyes behind thin-framed glasses. Her rigid posture and serious expression made it clear she wasn't there for a friendly conversation. "Good morning, Mrs. Winters," Mary replied, trying to maintain her composure. I'd like to apologize for what happened last night. It was a terrible mistake and—" Rebecca raised a hand, interrupting her. "Spare me the excuses, Mary. What happened yesterday was unacceptable. Falling asleep during your shift and in front of one of our most important guests. Do you have any idea of the risk you took? Of the image you conveyed of our hotel?" Mary lowered her eyes, feeling the weight of shame. "I know, Mum. I have no excuses. What's this?" Rebecca interrupted her again, her eyes fixed on the note on the table. Before Mary could react, the manager picked up the paper, reading its contents with an increasingly grim expression. "So," Rebecca said slowly, her voice dangerously calm, "besides sleeping on duty, you're also accepting gifts from guests?" Mary's blood ran cold. "No, it's nothing like that, I swear. I didn't even know about this note until now. It was Mr. Miller who—" "Oh, so you're on such intimate terms with Mr. Miller that he leaves you little notes and gifts?" Rebecca raised an eyebrow, her voice laden with insinuation. "Interesting. You're misunderstanding everything," Mary protested, feeling panic growing. "I never—" "Enough, Mary," Rebecca cut in, her voice now icy. "I've always suspected something was wrong with your performance lately. Coming in late, looking exhausted. And now this. Do you know what this looks like?" Mary felt tears returning to her eyes. "Please, Mrs. Winters, I can explain. I've been working extra shifts to pay for my daughter's medications. I would never do anything to compromise my job or the hotel's reputation." Rebecca observed her for a long moment, her calculating eyes. "Well, Mary, let's say I believe you for now. But understand that I'm keeping an eye on you. One slip up and you're out, am I clear?" "Yes, ma'am," Mary responded in a whisper. "Good. Now go home and rest. I expect to see you tonight, punctually, for your next shift," Rebecca ordered, turning to leave. At the last moment, she stopped and looked over her shoulder. "Oh, and Mary, I suggest you keep your interactions with guests strictly professional from now on." As soon as Rebecca left, Mary collapsed in her chair, shaking. The initial joy over Mr. Miller's generous gesture had transformed into a nightmare. She knew Rebecca hadn't believed her explanation and now had an excuse to monitor her even more closely. At that moment, Charlie woke up, stretching. Seeing Mary's state, he approached, concerned. "What happened, girl? You're pale." Mary tried to smile but failed miserably. "Oh, Charlie, I think I just made my situation even worse." As she briefly explained what happened, Charlie listened attentively, his expression becoming increasingly concerned. "That Rebecca, always looking for trouble. Don't worry, Mary. We'll figure this out." "How, Charlie?" she practically accused. "Me of getting involved with guests for money," Mary whispered, horrified. Charlie sighed heavily. "Look, I've known Rebecca for years. She's always been like this, manipulative. She uses anything to pressure employees, but we won't let that happen to you, okay?" Mary nodded, grateful for the support, but still feeling the weight of the situation. "Thank you, Charlie. I can't lose this job. Sophie depends on me." "And you won't lose it," Charlie stated with conviction. "Now go home, rest a bit. Take care of that little princess. Let me keep an eye on things here." With a quick hug and a grateful smile, Mary grabbed her purse and left the hotel. The morning sun warmed her face, but couldn't dispel the cloud of worry that hung over her. As she walked to the bus stop, Mary couldn't help but think about how her life had become complicated in a matter of hours. The kind gesture of a stranger, which should have been a blessing, now threatened her livelihood. In her purse pocket, the money Mr. Miller had left seemed to burn. Part of her wanted to return it, eliminate any suspicion, But the other part, the desperate mother who saw her daughter suffer, knew she couldn't give up that help. As the bus approached, Mary made a decision. She would use the money for Sophie's medications and to catch up on bills. After that, she would work even harder to prove her worth and integrity. She wouldn't allow Rebecca's insinuations to destroy everything she had fought for. With this resolution in mind, Mary boarded the bus, anxious to see her daughter, and for a few hours forget the problems that awaited her upon her return to the Ocean Star Hotel. What she didn't know was that, in his luxurious room on the top floor of the hotel, Richard Miller observed the street movement, his eyes following Mary's figure until she disappeared into the bus. His normally impassive face showed signs of concern and interest. "I hope it helped," he murmured to himself, moving away from the window. Something about that receptionist intrigued him, awakened feelings long dormant within him. And Richard. Miller was not a man to ignore his instincts, whether in business or personal life. As he prepared for another day of meetings and negotiations, he made a mental note to investigate more about Mary's situation. Something told him that his involvement in that woman's life was far from over. The day was just beginning at the Ocean Star Hotel, and with it, a web of events that would forever change the lives of Mary, Richard, and everyone around them began to weave, silently and inexorably. The sound of cheerful, childish laughter filled Mary's small apartment as soon as she opened the door. Sophie, with her messy curls and unicorn pajamas, came running down the hallway, throwing herself into her mother's arms. "Mommy, you're home!" exclaimed the girl, her face illuminated by a gap-toothed smile. Mary felt her heart melt, all worries momentarily forgotten as she hugged her daughter. "Hi, my love. Did you miss me?" "So much," Sophie responded, burying her face in her mother's neck. "Miss Lucille made pancakes, but they're not as yummy as yours." Lucille, the middle-aged neighbor who looked after Sophie during the nights, appeared in the kitchen doorway, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Welcome back, Mary. Everything okay at work?" Mary's smile faltered for an instant, but she quickly composed herself. Everything's fine, yes. Thank you for looking after her, Lucille." "It's nothing. You know I adore this little munchkin," Lucille replied, affectionately ruffling Sophie's hair. "Well, now that you're here, I'll be going. Get some rest. You look exhausted." After Lucille left, Mary let herself fall onto the worn-out living room sofa, with Sophie nestled in her lap. "So, my love, what do you want to do today?" "Can we go to the park?" Sophie asked, her eyes shining with expectation. Mary hesitated. She was exhausted and needed to sleep before her next shift. But the hopeful face of her daughter melted her resistance. "You know what? Yes, but first, how about a hearty breakfast?" While preparing eggs and toast in the small kitchen, Mary couldn't stop thinking about the events of the previous night. The money that Richard Miller had left was hidden in her purse, weighing on her conscience. Part of her wanted to use it, immediately to buy Sophie's medications and pay some overdue bills. Another part feared the consequences if Rebecca found out. "Mummy, why do you look so sad?" Sophie's voice brought her back to reality. Mary forced a smile. "It's nothing, sweetheart. Mummy's just a little tired." Sophie observed her with that peculiar wisdom that some children possess. "Is it because of work? You work too much, Mummy?" Mary's heart tightened. "I work so we can have a good life, my love. For you to have your medications, nice clothes, go to school." "But I don't need pretty clothes," Sophie said, surprising Mary. "I just want you to be home with me more." Tears threatened to spring to Mary's eyes, but she held them back. "Oh, my love," she whispered, hugging Sophie tightly. "I promise I'll try to spend more time with you, okay?" After breakfast, they headed to the small neighborhood park. While Sophie played on the swing, Mary watched her, lost in thought. How could she balance her daughter's needs with the demands of work? And now, with Rebecca's suspicions hanging over her, everything seemed even more complicated. Suddenly, her cell phone vibrated. It was a message from Charlie, the hotel security guard. "Mary, we need to talk. Rebecca is acting strangely. I think she's planning something. Can we meet before your shift today?" Mary's stomach twisted with anxiety. What more could go wrong? "All right." "Charlie, I'll meet you an hour before my shift," she replied quickly. Looking at Sophie, so happy and carefree on the swing, Mary felt a wave of determination. No matter what Rebecca was plotting, she would fight tooth and nail to protect her job and her daughter's future. Hours later, after putting Sophie to bed and leaving her in Lucille's care again, Mary headed to the Ocean Star Hotel. The night. Sky was heavy, promising rain, reflecting her turbulent state of mind. She met Charlie in a discreet cafe 2 blocks from the hotel. The security guard's normally jovial face was tense and worried. "What's going on, Charlie?" Mary asked as soon as she sat down. Charlie looked around as if afraid of being heard. "Rebecca is digging through the hotel records, Mary. She requested access to all security camera footage from the last few days. And that's not all. I heard her talking on the phone about a surprise audit." Mary felt her blood run cold. "But why? What is she looking for?" "I'm not sure," Charlie replied, frowning. "But I think it has to do with you and that note from Mr. Miller. She seems determined to find something compromising." "But I didn't do anything wrong," Mary exclaimed, frustrated. "It was just an act of kindness from a guest. I didn't even know about the money until I found the note." Charlie placed a comforting hand on hers. "I know that, Mary. But Rebecca, well, she's always had her methods. And there are rumors that she's desperate to impress the hotel owners. A big ethical problem solved by her would look very good in the eyes of the board." Mary sank into her chair, feeling defeated. "What do I do, Charlie? I can't lose this job. Sophie depends on me." "For now, keep working normally. Don't give any reason for suspicion. I'll keep an eye out and try to find out more," Charlie reassured. "Her and Mary, maybe it's better for you to keep that money in a safe place away from the hotel, just as a precaution." Nodding, Mary thanked Charlie and headed to the hotel, her shift about to begin. The rain was finally falling, fine and steady, soaking the streets. As she entered the luxurious lobby of the Ocean Star Hotel, Mary felt the weight of glances upon her. Did everyone already know? Had Rebecca spread rumors? Taking a deep breath, she walked to the reception desk, determined not to let fear show through. Little did she know that, in the office on the top floor, Rebecca Winters smiled with satisfaction. At her computer, where security camera images showed Mary finding the note that morning. "I knew it," Rebecca muttered to herself. "Something's wrong here and I'm going to find out. No one is going to ruin the reputation of my hotel." Meanwhile, in his luxurious suite, Richard Miller watched the rain through the panoramic window. His thoughts inexplicably returned to the receptionist with tired eyes and a gentle smile. There was something about her, a silent strength that intrigued him deeply. Picking up his phone, he dialed a number. "Alex, I need you to do a discreet search for me, about an employee of the Ocean Star Hotel." The night advanced, and with it the wheels of destiny continued to turn. Mary, unknowingly, was at the center of an increasingly complex web of interests and intentions. Her struggle to keep her job and care for Sophie was about to become much more complicated than she could ever imagine. As she attended to guests with her usual professional smile, Mary couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Every movement of hers seemed to be under scrutiny. The shadow of security cameras, previously ignored, now seemed threatening. The night promised to be long, and the days ahead a true test of her strength and determination. But Mary was willing to face any challenge. For Sophie, for their future, she would fight to the end. The rain continued outside, washing the streets, as if trying to clear the path for the events that were to come. At the Ocean Star Hotel, a different storm was forming, ready to forever change the lives of all involved. The days that followed were a tense mixture of apparent normality and growing anxiety for Mary. Each shift at the Ocean Star Hotel felt like walking through a minefield. Rebecca's looks, previously just severe, now carried a calculating gleam that made Mary inwardly shudder. On a particularly busy Thursday, Mary was alone at the reception desk, dealing with a constant flow of check-ins and guest requests. Her face maintained a professional smile, but inside she was exhausted. The sleepless nights, divided between extra shifts and worrying about Sophie, were taking their toll. It was at this moment that Richard Miller appeared in the lobby. Wearing an impeccable suit and carrying a leather briefcase, he seemed the embodiment of business success. His eyes, however, softened when they fell on Mary. "Good afternoon," he greeted, approaching the counter. "I hope you're feeling better since that night." Mary felt her face heat up, remembering the embarrassing incident. "Good afternoon, Mr. Miller. Yes, I'm much better, thank you. And thank you for your kindness. It was very generous of you." Richard nodded, a slight smile on his lips. "You're welcome. We all need a helping hand sometimes." Before Mary could respond, Rebecca Winter's cutting voice sounded behind her. "Mr. Miller, what a pleasure to see you. I hope everything is in order with your stay." Richard turned to the manager, his demeanor subtly changing to a mask of professional cordiality. "Certainly, Mrs. Winters. As always, the service is impeccable." Rebecca smiled, but her eyes remained cold. "I'm glad to hear that. Mary," she turned abruptly, "I need to speak with you in my office. Now." Mary's heart raced. She cast an apologetic look at Richard before following Rebecca. As she entered the meticulously organized office of the manager, Mary felt like she was entering the lion's den. Rebecca closed the door and sat down, indicating the chair in front of her desk for Mary. For long moments, she merely observed the young receptionist, like a predator evaluating its prey. "Mary," Rebecca finally began, her voice dangerously calm, "do you have any idea what happens to employees who abuse guests' trust?" Mary felt her blood freeze. I don't understand, Mrs. Winters. I never—" "Don't lie to me," Rebecca cut in, slamming her hand on the desk. "I saw the recordings. I saw you taking that note, saw the money. Do you think you can fool everyone with this little act of yours? As a dedicated mother?" The words hit Mary like a punch. "It's nothing like that. It was just an act of kindness from Mr. Miller. I didn't ask for anything. I didn't do anything wrong." Rebecca laughed, a cold sound without humor. "Oh, sure. And you expect me to believe that one of the richest men in the country simply decided to give money to a random receptionist? Please, Mary, don't take me for a fool." Tears of frustration and anger began to form in Mary's eyes. "It's the truth. Ask Mr. Miller. He'll confirm everything." "Oh yes, I'll rush to bother our VIP guest with—" "Your lies," Rebecca replied sarcastically. "No, Mary, this ends here. You have two options. Either you resign now quietly, or I'll open a case for improper conduct. And believe me, with the evidence I have, you'll never get a decent job in this city again." Mary's world seemed to crumble. Images of Sophie, of medical bills, of the small apartment they could barely maintain, all spun in her mind. "Please," she whispered, her voice choked. "I need this job. My daughter—" "Your personal life doesn't interest me," Rebecca cut in coldly. "You have until tomorrow to give me your decision. Now get out of my office." Staggering, Mary left the office. Barely able to contain her tears, she needed air, needed to think. She quickly headed for the back exit, ignoring the curious glances of her colleagues. In the alley behind the hotel, Mary finally let the tears flow freely. How could everything go so wrong? How would she explain to Sophie that they might not be able to pay for her medications anymore? "Mary?" A deep, gentle voice surprised her. It was Richard Miller standing at the entrance to the alley, a look of genuine concern on his face. "Mr. Miller," Mary stuttered, hurriedly trying to wipe away her tears. I'm sorry, I shouldn't—" Richard raised a hand, gently interrupting her. "Don't apologize. I overheard part of your conversation with Mrs. Winters. It seems my gesture caused more problems than help." Mary looked at him, surprised. "You heard? But how—" "The walls of this hotel are thinner than they appear," Richard replied with a slight smile. "Mary, I'm sorry. It wasn't my intention to cause all this trouble. Let me help clarify this misunderstanding." "No!" Mary exclaimed, startling them both with the vehemence of her reaction. "I mean, I appreciate your offer, Mr. Miller, but that would only make things worse. Mrs. Winters already thinks there's something improper between us." Richard frowned, clearly disturbed by the situation. "This is absurd. We can't let her destroy your career based on unfounded assumptions." At that moment, Mary's cell phone rang. It was Lucille, the neighbor who was looking after Sophie. "Hello? Lucille, what's wrong?" The voice on the other end sounded worried. "Mary, it's Sophie. She has a high fever, won't stop calling for you. I think we need to take her to the hospital." Mary's world seemed to spin. "Oh my God, I'm on my way right now." She hung up the phone, panic evident in her eyes. "What happened?" Richard asked, concerned by the sudden change in Mary's demeanor. "My daughter," Mary replied, her voice trembling. "She's sick, I need to go." Without thinking twice, Richard took his car keys from his pocket. "I'll drive you. It'll be faster than waiting for a taxi or bus." Mary hesitated for a second, but the urgency of the situation spoke louder. "Thank you," she murmured, following him to the parking lot. As the luxury car cut through the city streets, Mary felt as if she were living in two worlds simultaneously. The world of worry and fear for Sophie, and the surreal world of being in a millionaire's car who, inexplicably, seemed determined to help her. On the back seat, forgotten in the rush of the moment, lay Richard's leather briefcase. Inside it, documents that could change not only Mary's fate, but the entire balance of power at the Ocean Star Hotel. The city passed by in a blur through the car windows, and with each kilometer traveled, the lives of Mary and Richard became more intertwined, guided by forces that neither fully understood. The hospital approached on the horizon, and with it, an uncertain future full of challenges, revelations, and perhaps a chance at redemption for both. Richard's car pulled up, smoothly in front of the public hospital. Mary barely waited for the vehicle to come to a complete stop before jumping out, her heart pounding frantically in her chest. Richard followed close behind, his presence a silent anchor amid the chaos of emotions that dominated her. In the emergency room, they found Lucille holding a pale and feverish Sophie in her arms. The girl, usually so lively, seemed small and fragile under the fluorescent lights. "Mommy," Sophie called weakly upon seeing Mary, extending her little arms. Mary ran to her daughter, taking her in her arms. "I'm here, my love. Everything will be fine." She turned to Lucille, her eyes full of gratitude. "Thank you for bringing her, Lucille." The neighbor nodded, her curious gaze alternating between Mary and Richard. "You're welcome, dear. I hope it's nothing serious." A doctor approached, interrupting the moment. "Please, come with me. We need to examine the child." The following hours passed in a blur of exams, medical questions and tense waiting moments. Richard remained by Mary's side the entire time, offering silent support and dealing with hospital bureaucracy when necessary. Finally, the doctor returned with the results. "Ms. Davis, your daughter has had a relapse. The fever is a side effect of the medication, but also a sign that the current treatment isn't being as effective as we'd like." Mary felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. "What does that mean, doctor?" The doctor sighed, adjusting his glasses. "It means we need to adjust the treatment. There's a new medication available, more effective, but..." He hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "But what?" Mary insisted, fearing the answer. "It's significantly more expensive," the doctor concluded. "And unfortunately, it's not covered by the basic health insurance plan." Mary closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders. How could she pay for a more expensive treatment when she could barely afford the current one? And now, with the threat of losing her job. It was at this moment that Richard stepped forward. "Doctor, how much would this new treatment cost?" The doctor named an amount that made Mary gasp. It was more than she earned in several months. Richard, however, didn't blink. "Right. Please, start the treatment immediately. I'll cover all costs." "What?" Mary exclaimed, turning to face him. "Mr. Miller, I can't accept that. It's too much, Richard gently interrupted her. "Mary, please, let me help. It's not just for you, but for Sophie. No child should suffer for lack of resources." Tears of gratitude and confusion welled in Mary's eyes. Part of her wanted to refuse, to keep her pride intact. But looking at Sophie asleep in the hospital bed, she knew she couldn't put her pride above her daughter's health. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. As the doctor left to arrange the new treatment, Mary and Richard remained. In a silence laden with unspoken meanings, it was Richard who finally broke the silence. "Mary, there's something I need to tell you," he began, his voice serious. "The reason I was at the hotel today, I'm not just a guest. I'm one of the main shareholders of the hotel chain. Mary stared at him, shocked. What? But why didn't you say anything before? Richard ran a hand through his hair, suddenly looking tired. I was doing a surprise inspection. I wanted to see how things really worked without the veneer that's usually applied to impress the owners. He paused, his eyes meeting Mary's. And what I saw, well, let's say I'm deeply disappointed with the current management. The implications of this revelation hit Mary like a wave. So when Mrs. Winters said she wanted to impress the owners, she had no idea I was already there, observing everything, Richard completed. Mary, what happened to you is unacceptable. The way Rebecca has been managing the hotel, treating the employees, this is going to change. At that moment, Mary's cell phone vibrated. It was a message from Charlie. Be careful. Rebecca is furious. She discovered you left with a guest. She's threatening to call the police for improper conduct. Where are you? Mary paled, showing the message to Richard. This can't be happening, she murmured, panic growing in her voice. Richard read the message, his expression hardening. Enough. This ends now. He took his own phone, dialing quickly. Alex, yes, it's me. I need you to come to Central Hospital immediately and bring those documents we discussed. Yes, all of them. Turning to Mary, Richard explained, Alex is my lawyer. He'll bring the necessary documents to resolve this situation once and for all. The following hours were a whirlwind of events. Alex arrived, bringing with him a folder full of documents. Richard and he spoke in low voices, occasionally consulting Mary about details of her experience at the hotel. Meanwhile, Sophie woke up feeling a bit better thanks to the new medication. Mary divided her attention between comforting her daughter and trying to understand what Richard and Alex were planning. Finally, as night was advancing, Richard approached Mary, his face showing a mixture of determination and kindness. Mary, we've prepared everything. Tomorrow morning we'll go to the hotel. We're going to confront Rebecca and put an end to this situation. He paused, his eyes seeking hers. But before that, I need to know, do you trust me? Mary looked at Sophie, now sleeping peacefully, then at Richard. In a few hours, this man had completely changed the course of their lives. He was practically a stranger and yet had demonstrated more compassion and integrity than many she had. Known for years. Yes, she answered softly. I trust you. Richard nodded, a slight smile on his lips. Then rest a bit. Tomorrow will be a new day, and I promise you, things will change for the better. As Mary settled into the armchair next, to Sophie's bed, her mind whirled with the day's events. From threats of dismissal to surprising revelations, from despair to hope, everything had changed in a matter of hours. Outside Sophie's hospital room, Richard looked out the window, observing the city lights. His thoughts were focused on the battle that awaited them the next morning. Rebecca Winters didn't know it, but her reign of terror at the Ocean Star Hotel was about to come to an end. The night advanced, bringing with it the promise of a new dawn. On the horizon, the first lights of day began to appear, announcing not just a new day but the beginning of a new era for Mary, Sophie, and surprisingly, for Richard himself. Morning arrived with a mixture of apprehension and determination. Mary, after a restless night in the hospital armchair, woke to Richard's gentle touch on her shoulder. Good morning, he said gently. How's Sophie? Mary stretched, looking at her daughter, who was still sleeping peacefully. The fever is down. It seems the new medication is working. Richard nodded, satisfied. Great. The doctor said she can be discharged this afternoon, but before that we have a matter to resolve. The reality of what awaited them at the hotel hit Mary like a bucket of cold water. I'm afraid, she admitted, her voice almost a whisper. Richard knelt beside her, his eyes meeting hers. I understand, but remember, you're not alone in this. I'm by your side, and we have all the evidence we need to expose the truth. Mary nodded, taking a deep breath to calm her nerves. After leaving detailed instructions with the nurse and giving Sophie a kiss on the forehead, she followed Richard to the parking lot. The journey to the Ocean Star Hotel was silent, each immersed in their own thoughts. When they finally arrived, Mary felt her heart race as she saw the imposing facade of the hotel. "Ready?" Richard asked, extending his hand to her. Mary hesitated for a moment before accepting the gesture. "Ready." Together, they entered the lobby. The usual morning bustle was replaced by a tense silence as soon as the employees noticed Mary's presence beside Richard Miller. Charlie, the security guard, cast a worried look at Mary, but she reassured him with a slight nod. Rebecca Winters emerged from her office, her face a mask of false cordiality that barely hid her fury at seeing Mary. "Mr. Miller, what a pleasant surprise," Rebecca began, completely ignoring Mary. "Can I help you with something?" Richard smiled, but it was a cold smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Actually, Mrs. Winters, yes you can. I'd like an immediate meeting with you and the hotel's administrative board." Rebecca blinked, visibly disconcerted. "The board? But they're not here, and—" "Oh, don't worry," Richard gently interrupted her. "They're already on their way. I personally summoned them this morning." The color drained from Rebecca's face. "You summoned them? But who are you to—" "Forgive me. I think I haven't properly introduced myself," Richard said, his voice now laden with authority. "Richard Miller, majority shareholder of the Stellar Hospitality Group. I've been conducting a surprise inspection for the past few days." The shock was palpable in the air. Employees passing by stopped to observe the scene, mouths agape. Rebecca looked as if she had been struck by lightning. "Now," Richard continued, "I suggest we head to the conference room. We have much to discuss." In the following minutes, the hotel's conference room filled up. Board members arrived hurriedly, casting curious glances at Mary, who felt out of place amid so many executives in suits. When everyone was seated, Richard took the floor. "Ladies and gentlemen, I've called this meeting to discuss serious management problems I've observed at this hotel." He then began to detail his findings: the abusive treatment of employees, the veiled threats, the culture of fear established by Rebecca. With each revelation, board members exchanged concerned looks. Rebecca, who had remained silent until then, finally exploded. "This is absurd. Everything I did was for the good of the hotel. And as for her," she pointed accusingly at Mary, "she is clearly manipulating you, Mr. Miller, accepting money from guests, going out with them." "Enough!" Richard's voice thundered. In the room. "Mrs. Winters, I have concrete evidence of your actions. Recordings, employee testimonials, altered records. Your management is not only unethical, but borders on illegal." He then turned to Mary. "Ms. Davis, please tell everyone about your experience here." With a voice trembling at first, but gaining strength with each word, Mary reported everything: the unpaid overtime, Rebecca's threats, the unfounded accusation about the money Richard had left as a gesture of kindness. The silence that followed was heavy. Rebecca, for the first time, seemed to have been left speechless. One of the board members, a grey-haired gentleman, cleared his throat. "Mr. Miller, these are very serious accusations. What do you propose?" Richard didn't hesitate. "The immediate dismissal of Rebecca Winters and a complete restructuring of the management of this hotel. Additionally," he paused, looking at Mary, "I would like to propose that Ms. Davis temporarily assume the position of assistant manager." The room exploded in murmurs. Mary looked at Richard, shocked. "Me? But—" "You know this hotel better than anyone," Richard explained. "You have the trust of the employees, and more importantly, you have integrity. That's exactly what we need to rebuild the reputation of the Ocean Star." Rebecca, who until then had seemed stunned, stood up abruptly. "This is an outrage. You can't do this to me. I built this hotel. "You almost destroyed it," Richard interrupted coldly. "Your management based on fear and manipulation ends today. Security, please escort Mrs. Winters out of the building." As Rebecca was led away, loudly protesting, the board voted unanimously in favor of Richard's proposal. In a matter of minutes, Mary's life had completely changed. When the meeting ended and the executives began to disperse, Mary remained seated, trying to process everything that had happened. Richard approached, a genuine smile on his face. "Congratulations, Mrs. Assistant Manager." Mary looked at him, tears of relief and gratitude shining in her eyes. "I don't even know how to thank you. All this seems like a dream." "You don't need to thank me," Richard replied softly. "You deserve this opportunity. Now, how about we go pick up Sophie from the hospital? I'm sure she'll be proud of her mom." As they left the conference room, the hotel employees had gathered in the lobby. The news had spread quickly. When they saw Mary, a spontaneous round of applause erupted. Charlie approached, a broad smile on his kind face. "I told you everything. Would be all right, didn't I? Congratulations, boss." Mary laughed, hugging her friend. For the first time in a long time, she felt that the future was full of possibilities. Beside her, Richard observed the scene with a mixture of satisfaction and something more, something he wasn't yet ready to name. He knew that his decision to help Mary had been more than just business. There was something about her, a strength, a goodness that attracted him in a way he hadn't experienced in years. As they walked together to the parking lot, ready to pick up Sophie, Richard realized that this wasn't just Mary's redemption story. It was the beginning of something new for him too, a chance to rediscover what really mattered in life. The sun shone brightly on the Ocean Star Hotel, as if announcing the beginning of a new era. For Mary, for Richard, for all the employees, it was a new beginning. And although the path ahead was still uncertain, one thing was clear: they would face the challenges together, with hope and determination. The days following the confrontation at the Ocean Star Hotel were a whirlwind of emotions and changes for Mary. The transition from receptionist to assistant manager brought with it a series of challenges that she faced with determination and a touch of apprehension. On a sunny morning, about 2 weeks after her promotion, Mary found herself in her new office, the same one that had previously belonged to Rebecca. She still felt out of place in that spacious and elegant space, so different from the reception desk where she had spent so many years. While reviewing some reports, a soft knock on the door made her look up. It was Charlie, his warm smile lighting up the room. "Good morning, boss," he joked, entering the room. "How are you adapting to the rarefied air of the executive heights?" Mary laughed, feeling some of the tension leave her shoulders. "I still feel like I'm wearing someone else's shoes, to be honest, but I'm learning." Charlie nodded understandingly. "You're doing very well, Mary. The employees are happier, the atmosphere is lighter. It's as if the entire hotel is breathing again." Charlie's words warmed Mary's heart. She had worked hard to implement positive changes, prioritizing employee well-being and service quality. Still, insecurity sometimes haunted her. "Thank you, Charlie. That means a lot to me," she replied, genuinely touched. "How are things in security?" They talked for a few minutes about the hotel's operations, and Mary once again found herself grateful for Charlie's friendship and support. When he left, she returned her attention to the reports, determined to understand every aspect of the hotel's operation. Hours passed, and Mary was so absorbed in her work that she almost didn't notice the arrival of noon. A familiar knock on the door made her smile even before seeing who it was. "Special delivery for the assistant manager," Richard's amused voice sounded. Mary looked up, her smile widening at the sight of Richard standing at the door, holding 2 bags of food. "Mr. Miller, to what do I owe the honor?" she joked, although her heart had slightly accelerated. Richard entered, placing the bags on the desk. "I thought you could use a lunch break. And please, how many times do I have to ask you to call me Richard?" Mary blushed slightly. In the past few weeks, Richard had become a constant presence at the hotel, supervising the changes and offering guidance. But more than that, he had become a friend, someone she trusted and for whom she felt a growing affection. "Sorry, it's a habit," she replied, helping him unpack lunch. "Richard." They began to eat, falling into an easy conversation about recent events at the hotel. Mary was surprised at how comfortable she felt in Richard's presence, as if she had known him for years, not weeks. "And how's Sophie?" Richard asked, his voice softening at the mention of the girl. Mary's face lit up. "She's much better. The new treatment is working wonders. She even asked when she could visit Mommy's hotel again." Richard smiled, his eyes shining in a way that made Mary's heart skip a beat. How about bringing her this weekend? We could organize a little tour for her. She'd love that, Mary replied, feeling a wave of gratitude. Richard, I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done for us. Richard placed his hand on hers, the touch sending a shiver down her spine. You don't need to thank me, Mary. Seeing you and Sophie happy, seeing this hotel thrive, that's reward enough. Their gazes met, and for a moment the world seemed to stop. There was something growing between them, something that went beyond friendship or gratitude. But before either could act on these feelings, the phone rang, breaking the moment. Mary answered, her face becoming serious as she listened. When she hung up, she turned to Richard with concern in her eyes. That was from reception. Rebecca is downstairs demanding to speak with management. She's quite agitated. Richard immediately stood up. Let's go together. You don't have to face this alone. Going down to the lobby, they found a chaotic scene. Rebecca Winters, with disheveled hair and bloodshot eyes, was yelling at the receptionists, demanding to be heard. Rebecca, Mary's firm voice cut through the air. Please come with me, we can talk in private. Rebecca turned, her eyes narrowing when she saw Mary. You, she spat the word. You stole my hotel, my life. No one stole anything from you, Rebecca, Richard intervened, his voice calm but authoritative. Your own actions brought you to this situation. The next few minutes were tense. Rebecca alternated between angry accusations and desperate pleas to get her job back. Mary, with Richard's silent support, remained firm, offering help for Rebecca to seek professional help, but making it clear there was no possibility of returning to the hotel. When Rebecca was finally escorted out, Mary felt her legs weaken. Richard supported her, gently guiding her to a sofa in the lobby. You were amazing, he murmured, sitting beside her. Mary shook her head, unexpected tears springing to her eyes. I feel terrible. I know she did wrong things, but seeing her like that. Richard nodded understandingly. Your compassion is one of the things I admire most about you, Mary. But remember, you are not responsible for Rebecca's choices. They remained there for a few moments, Richard offering silent comfort as Mary processed her emotions. When she finally calmed down, she looked at Richard with a new gleam of determination in her eyes. Thank you for being here, she said softly. I don't know if I could have faced this alone. Richard smiled, his gaze full of an emotion he no longer tried to hide. I will always be here for you, Mary. Always. In that moment, surrounded by the bustle of the hotel returning to normal, Mary and Richard shared a look that said more than words could express. It was a silent promise, an acknowledgement of the special bond that had formed between them. As they returned to work, Mary felt a new wave of confidence. Challenges would continue to come, but she was no longer alone. With Richard by her side, with the support of her team and Sophie's love, she was ready to face anything the future might bring. The Ocean Star Hotel, once a place of fear and oppression, now pulsed with a new energy. It was a reflection of Mary's transformation, a promise of better days to come. And as the afternoon sun bathed the lobby with its golden light, it was as if the universe itself smiled upon this new chapter that was beginning to unfold. The following months brought a busy but rewarding routine for Mary. The Ocean Star Hotel flourished under her management, with guest and employee satisfaction reaching record levels. However, balancing her new career with maternal responsibilities wasn't always easy. On a sunny Saturday afternoon, Mary was at home helping Sophie with her homework when her phone rang. It was Richard. Hello, Mary. His voice sounded warm through the device. I hope I'm not interrupting anything. Mary smiled, feeling that now familiar warmth in her chest that his voice always provoked. Don't worry. Sophie and I were just finishing some math exercises. What's up? Actually, Richard hesitated for a moment. I was thinking, would you both like to go out? There's a new amusement park in town, and I thought Sophie might enjoy it. Sophie's face lit up at the words amusement park. Mary laughed softly. I think I've just been put against the wall. Sophie seems very excited about the idea. Great. The excitement in Richard's voice was palpable. Can I come by in an hour? After confirming the details, Mary hung up the phone, a mix of emotions bubbling in her chest. Over the past few months, Richard had become a constant presence in their lives. It wasn't uncommon for him to show up with invitations for outings or dinners, always including Sophie in his plans. An hour later, the doorbell rang. Sophie ran to open the door, shouting excitedly, "Uncle Richard!" Richard entered, smiling. Broadly, he crouched down to hug Sophie, who immediately began to chatter about all the attractions she wanted to see in the park. Mary observed the scene with a tender smile. Seeing Richard interacting so naturally with Sophie always deeply touched her. He raised his eyes, meeting Mary's gaze, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop. "Hi," he said softly, standing up. "Hi," Mary replied, suddenly feeling shy. The trip to the park was an explosion of laughter, cotton candy, and excitement. Sophie dragged Richard from one ride to another, her energy seemingly inexhaustible. Mary followed them, her heart filling with joy at each laugh from her daughter. During a pause, while Sophie was entertained in a ring toss game, Richard turned to Mary. "You look happy," he observed, his eyes shining. Mary nodded, a soft smile on her lips. "I am. It's good to see Sophie like this, so carefree and joyful. After everything we've been through." Richard gently placed his hand on hers. "You're an incredible mother, Mary. Sophie is lucky to have you." Their gazes met, and for a moment, Mary felt as if the world around them disappeared. There was so much she wanted to say, so many emotions struggling to be expressed. "Richard, she began, but was interrupted by Sophie's excited shout. "Mommy, Uncle Richard, look, I won a teddy bear." The moment passed, but the electricity between them remained. Throughout the afternoon, Mary caught Richard looking at her several times, his gaze full of an emotion she dared not name, but that made her heart race. When night fell and they finally left the park, Sophie was sleeping peacefully in Richard's arms. On the way back home, the car was quiet, filled only with the soft breathing of the sleeping girl. Arriving at Mary's apartment, Richard gently carried Sophie inside, placing her in her bed. Mary watched him tucking the girl in, adjusting her covers with a care that melted her heart. Back in the living room, they found themselves alone, the silence laden with unspoken words. "Thank you for today," Mary finally said. Sophie loved it. I loved it. Richard took a step toward her, his eyes intense. "Mary, there's something I need to tell you." Mary's heart raced. "What is it?" Richard took a deep breath, as if gathering courage. "These past few months, getting to know you and Sophie, have been the happiest of my life in a long time. I think I'm falling in love with you." Mary felt as if the air had been sucked from her lungs. All the emotions she had suppressed, all the feelings she had tried to ignore came to the surface at once. "Richard, she hesitated, tears forming in her eyes. "I have feelings for you too, but I'm afraid. Sophie, the job, our lives are so different." Richard came closer, taking her hands in his. "I know it's complicated. I know there's a lot at stake, but Mary, what I feel for you, for Sophie, it's real, and if you're willing, I'd like to try, step by step, no rush." Mary looked into his eyes, seeing sincerity, affection, and something more. Hope. Slowly, she nodded. "Okay," she whispered. "Let's try." The smile that illuminated Richard's face was radiant. Gently, he leaned in, his lips meeting hers in a soft kiss full of promise. When they parted, both were smiling, a little breathless and with racing hearts. "Good night, Mary," Richard said softly, heading for the door. "Good night, Richard," she replied, her smile lighting up the entire apartment. As she closed the door, Mary leaned against it, her heart overflowing with emotions. From Sophie's room, she heard a soft, "Mommy?" Entering the room, she found Sophie sitting up in bed, rubbing her eyes sleepily. "Hey, princess. Everything okay?" Sophie smiled, still, half asleep. "Is Uncle Richard gone already?" "Yes, love, he had to go." "Home?" Sophie paused as if considering something important. Then, with the innocence and wisdom that only a child can have, she said, "Mommy, do you like Uncle Richard? Like... Mary felt her cheeks flush. Why do you think that, sweetheart? Because you smile differently when he's around, and he looks at you like in princess movies. Mary laughed softly, hugging her daughter. You're very smart, you know. Yes, I like Uncle Richard very much. Sophie yawned, nestling in her mother's arms. Good, I like him too, he makes us happy. With those simple words, Sophie fell asleep again, leaving Mary lost in thought. Yes, Richard made them happy. And maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something truly special. Lying down beside her daughter, Mary closed her eyes, a soft smile on her lips. The future, which once seemed so uncertain, now shone with possibilities. And for the first time in a long time, Mary allowed herself to dream of a happily ever after that included not just her and Sophie, but also the man who had entered their lives in such an unexpected and transformative way. The weeks that followed the kiss in Mary's apartment were like a dream. Richard and she carefully navigated the first steps of their relationship, always mindful of Sophie's presence and the complexities of their professional lives. On a sunny Sunday morning, the three decided to have a picnic in the park. Sophie ran ahead chasing butterflies, while Mary and Richard walked side by side, their hands occasionally touching, sending shivers through both their bodies. You know, Richard began, his gaze fixed on Sophie, I never thought I'd feel this way. Again, so complete, Mary smiled, gently squeezing his hand. I know what you mean. After Sophie's father left, I thought it would be just the two of us against the world. But now it's the three of us, Richard completed, turning to face her with a tender, Trysa. The moment was interrupted by Sophie, who came running toward them. Mommy, Uncle Richard, look what I found. In her hands, she carefully held a small fallen bird. I think it's hurt, she said, concern evident in her voice. Richard crouched beside her, gently examining the bird. It looks like it just fell from the nest. See, up there, he pointed to a nearby tree. Can we help it? Sophie asked, her eyes large and hopeful. Mary smiled, proud of her daughter's compassion. Of course we can, sweetheart, but we have to be very careful. The three spent the next hour trying to return the chick to its nest. Richard, with Sophie sitting on his shoulders, finally managed to place the small bird back to safety. When they returned to the picnic spot, Mary observed Sophie and Richard laughing together, and her heart filled with an emotion she couldn't fully name. It was more than happiness. It was a sense of belonging, of family. However, not everything was smooth sailing. The following week, Mary faced her first major challenge as assistant manager of the Ocean Star Hotel. An important group of guests, executives from a large company, was dissatisfied with their rooms and threatened to cancel their extended stay. The loss would be significant for the hotel. Mary spent hours negotiating, offering alternatives and seeking creative solutions. When she finally reached an agreement that satisfied the guests, she was exhausted but proud. Exiting a final meeting, with the group, she found Richard waiting in the hallway. I heard you saved the day, he said, a proud smile on his face. Mary blushed slightly. I just did my job. But yes, we managed to keep the guests and even earned a recommendation from them. Richard approached, taking her hands in his. You're amazing, you know that. The way you handle people, how you solve problems. I'm so proud of you. Their gazes met, and for a moment Mary felt as if she could lose herself in those blue eyes. She was about to respond when her phone rang, breaking the moment. It was Sophie's school. The girl had a fever and needed to be picked up immediately. Oh. No, Mary murmured, panic growing in her voice. I have an important meeting in half an hour with suppliers. I can't cancel, but Sophie... I'll go, Richard said without hesitation. I can pick up Sophie and take her home. You can go straight there as soon as you finish your meeting. Mary looked at him, surprised and grateful. You would do that, are you sure? Richard smiled, giving a soft kiss on her forehead. Of course. We're a team, remember? Those words, so simple and yet so profound, made Mary's heart leap. She nodded, grateful, and watched Richard leave quickly. Hours later, when Mary finally arrived home, exhausted from the long meeting, she found a scene that made her stop at the door, moved. Richard was on the sofa, Sophie asleep in his arms. A damp compress rested on the girl's forehead, and several medications and a glass of water were on the small table beside him. Richard was softly reading a storybook, even with Sophie already asleep. Noticing Mary, he smiled, putting a finger to his lips to indicate silence. Carefully, he stood up, carrying Sophie to her room. When he returned, he found Mary still, standing in the same place, silent tears rolling down her face. "Hey," he said softly, approaching. "Everything's okay, the fever is already down and she slept peacefully most of the time." Mary hugged him tightly, burying her face in his chest. "Thank you," she whispered, "for taking care of her, for being here, for everything." Richard hugged her back, kissing the top of her head. "Always, Mary, I will always be here for both of you." In that moment, something subtly changed between them. It wasn't just gratitude or attraction. It was the realization that what they had was deeper, more real than either had experienced before. Looking into each other's eyes, they shared a tender kiss, full of unspoken promises and hopes for the future. When they separated, Mary smiled, her eyes shining with a new certainty. "Would you like to stay for dinner? I can make something quick and we can eat right here in case Sophie wakes up." Richard nodded, his smile lighting up the entire apartment. "There's nowhere in the world I'd rather be." As they prepared a simple meal together, talking in low voices and exchanging affectionate glances, Mary felt a peace she hadn't experienced in years. The day's difficulties at work and with Sophie seemed small now, faced alongside someone who cared so deeply. The future was still uncertain, with challenges that would surely come. But that night, in that small apartment full of love and care, Mary knew they had found something special. A family built not by blood, but by love and the choice to be together, facing each day side by side. And so, amid soft laughter and whispered plans for the weekend, a new page of their lives began to be written, full of possibilities and the kind of love that transforms and heals. The months that followed brought a pleasant routine for Mary, Sophie, and Richard. Their relationship flourished, carefully balancing professional and personal life. At the Ocean Star Hotel, Mary continued to impress with her efficient and compassionate management, while at home, the three formed an increasingly cohesive unit. On a Friday afternoon, Mary was in her office finalizing some reports when she received an unexpected call. It was Alex, Richard's lawyer. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Davis." Alex's serious voice sounded through the phone. "Sorry to bother you, but we have a situation that requires your immediate attention." The concerned tone of Alex made Mary sit up straight, in her chair. "What happened, Mr. Alex?" "I received a judicial notification today. Rebecca Winters is suing the hotel. And you, personally." Mary felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. "What? But why?" Alex sighed heavily. "She alleges wrongful dismissal, defamation, and, well, there are accusations that your promotion was the result of an improper relationship with Mr. Miller." Mary's world seemed to spin. All the insecurities she had overcome in recent months threatened to resurface. "That's absurd. I know, Mary," Alex gently interrupted her. "And we're going to prove it. But we need to act quickly. Can you come to my office today?" After hanging up, Mary sat stunned. The fear of losing everything she had fought for consumed her. Her hands trembled when she picked up the phone to call Richard. His reaction was immediate. "I'm on my way to the hotel. We're going to face this together, Mary. Don't worry." When Richard arrived, he found Mary pale and shaken. He hugged her tightly, feeling her tremble in his arms. "Hey, look at me," he said softly, lifting her chin. "We're going to get through this. You did nothing wrong." Mary nodded, trying to compose herself. "But what if people believe her? What if I lose my job, my reputation?" Richard held her hands firmly. "That's not going to happen. We have the truth on our side, and we're going to fight with everything we've got." In Alex's office, they discussed strategies for hours. The lawyer was confident they could refute the accusations, but warned that the process would be draining. "The biggest challenge will be public perception," Alex explained. "Rebecca may not have concrete evidence, but rumors can be harmful." In the days that followed, news of the lawsuit leaked to the local press. Suddenly, Mary found herself at the center of a media storm. Reporters approached her on the street. Sensationalist headlines speculated about her relationship with Richard, and on social media, divided opinions simmered. The impact on her personal life was immediate. Some parents from Sophie's school began to treat her coldly, and even at the hotel, Mary could feel curious glances and whispers when she passed by. One night, after putting Sophie to bed, Mary collapsed in Richard's arms, the tears she had suppressed for days finally overflowing. "I don't know if I can handle this," she sobbed. Maybe I should resign, end this mess." Richard hugged her tighter, his heart breaking at seeing her so shaken. "No, Mary, we're not going to let Rebecca win like this. You worked hard, you deserve to be where you are." He moved slightly away, looking into her eyes. "Remember the day we met? You were exhausted, but still so dedicated. That's what made me notice you, not some initial romantic interest. You earned your position on your own merit." His words seemed to awaken something in Mary. Slowly, she straightened up, wiping away her tears. "You're right. I can't give up now, not just for me, but for Sophie, for all the employees who trust me." The next morning, Mary arrived at the hotel with a new determination. She gathered the entire team and, for the first time, spoke openly about the lawsuit and her relationship with Richard. "I know there are many rumors circulating," she began, her voice firm despite the inner nervousness. "I want you to know the truth directly from me. Yes, Richard and I are in a relationship, but it started long after my promotion, which was based solely on my work and dedication to this hotel." She paused, looking into the eyes of each employee. "I understand if some of you have doubts or concerns. I'm open to talking with each one of you. What we've built here in the last few months, the work environment, the team spirit is real and valuable. I won't let false accusations destroy that." To her surprise and relief, the reaction was overwhelmingly positive. Charlie was the first to speak up, his voice laden with emotion. "We're with you, Mary. We know who you are and how you got here." Other employees joined in, offering words of support and encouragement. Mary felt tears of gratitude forming in her eyes. In the days that followed, the tide began to turn. Employees and hotel guests began giving interviews defending Mary. Stories about her compassionate actions and efficient management began to circulate, contrasting with Rebecca's accusations. A week after the meeting with the team, Mary received a surprising call. It was an investigative journalist who had uncovered evidence of financial irregularities committed by Rebecca during her management at the hotel. "This changes everything," Alex said, reviewing the new documents. "With this, we can not only refute Rebecca's accusations but also open a countersuit." Mary hesitated. "I don't want revenge. I just want this to end." Richard, who was by her side, gently squeezed her hand. "The decision is yours, Mary, but think that this could prevent Rebecca from harming other people in the future." After much reflection, Mary decided to move forward with the countersuit. The legal battle would be long, she knew, but now she felt prepared to face it. That night, as she watched Sophie sleeping peacefully, Mary reflected on the emotional roller coaster of the past few weeks. She had been tested in ways she never imagined, but had also discovered an inner strength she didn't know she possessed. Richard joined her, hugging her from behind and softly kissing her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" Mary turned, looking into the eyes of the man who had become her safe harbor. "I'm thinking about how unpredictable life is. A few months ago, I could barely keep my head above water. Now I'm in the middle of a battle I never imagined, but I'm not afraid anymore." Richard smiled, gently touching her face. "You're the strongest woman I've ever met, Mary, and I'm honored to be by your side on this journey." They kissed tenderly, the love between them stronger than ever, forged in the flames of adversity. As they prepared for bed, Mary knew the fight was far from over. But now, with Richard by her side, with the support of her team, and with the strength she had discovered in herself, she was ready to face any storm that came. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Mary faced it not with fear, but with hope and determination. The battle that Rebecca had initiated as petty revenge had transformed into an opportunity for Mary to prove, once again, what she was capable of. And so, embracing Richard, with the soft sound of Sophie's breathing coming from the room next, Dr. Mary fell asleep, dreaming not of tomorrow's challenges, but of the victories that were to come. The months that followed were an emotional and eventful roller coaster for Mary. The legal process dragged on, with hearings, testimonies, and a constant battle in the court of public opinion. Despite the strain, Mary remained steadfast, supported by Richard, her team at the hotel, and, surprisingly, by a community that was beginning to rally around her. On a particularly stressful afternoon, after another long session with the lawyers, Mary decided to take a walk to clear her mind. Her steps unconsciously led her to the park, where she used to take Sophie on weekends. Sitting on a bench, she watched the children playing, lost in thought. "Mary!" A familiar voice pulled her from her reverie. Turning around, she was faced with a figure she hadn't seen in years, Peter, Sophie's father. For a moment, Mary was speechless, a mixture of emotions, anger, hurt, confusion, flooding her chest. Peter looked nervous, aged beyond his years. Can I sit down?" he asked hesitantly. Mary nodded silently, trying to process the situation. "I saw the news," Peter began, his voice low. "About the lawsuit, about everything." Mary stared at him, her voice finally finding its way. "Why are you here, Peter, after all these years?" Peter sighed deeply. I wanted to apologize to you. I know it's too late, that it probably doesn't mean anything now, but leaving you and Sophie was the biggest mistake of my life." The words hit Mary like a punch. So many nights she had dreamed of hearing these words, and now that she finally heard them, she didn't know how to react. "You're right," she finally said, her voice trembling. "It is too late. Sophie and I have moved on. We have a new life now." Peter nodded, a sad smile on his lips. "I know, and I'm happy for you, really. I just wanted you to know that I'm proud of how you've handled all of this. You were always strong, Mary, stronger than I ever was." They talked for a few more minutes, Peter telling her about his life in recent years, his regret, his struggle to become a better person. When they finally said goodbye, Mary felt as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders, a weight she didn't even know she was still carrying. Returning home, Mary found Richard and Sophie making cookies in the kitchen, flour scattered everywhere and laughter filling the air. The domestic scene hit her with unexpected force, making her realize how much her life had changed, how much she had grown. "Mommy!" Sophie shouted, running to hug her, leaving cookie dough marks on her clothes. "Look what we're making!" Richard approached, a warm smile on his face that quickly turned to concern when he saw Mary's expression. "Is everything okay?" he asked softly. Mary nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "Yes, I ran into Peter today." The surprise on Richard's face was evident, but he waited patiently for her to continue. That night, after putting Sophie to bed, Mary and Richard talked at length. She shared the details of the encounter, the emotions it had awakened, the sense of closure it had brought. "How do you feel now?" Richard asked gently, holding her hands. Mary reflected for a moment. "I feel free, as if the last link that tied me to the past had finally broken. And now," she looked deeply into Richard's eyes, "now I'm ready for our future completely." The kiss they shared was full of renewed promise and love. In the weeks that followed, a new energy seemed to envelop Mary. In court, she faced Rebecca's accusations with a calm and confidence that impressed even the most skeptical judges. At the hotel, her leadership inspired the team to reach new levels of excellence. It was during one of these busy weeks that Mary received an unexpected call from Alex. "Mary," the lawyer's voice sounded excited, "we have a turn in the case. Rebecca wants to make a deal." The news caught Mary by surprise. "A deal? But why? I thought she was determined to take this to the end." Alex explained that the evidence they had gathered, combined with the growing public opinion in Mary's favor, had finally convinced Rebecca that her position was untenable. After intense discussions with Richard and the legal team, Mary agreed to meet with Rebecca to discuss the terms of the agreement. The meeting was scheduled to take place in a neutral office. On the appointed day, Mary entered the meeting room with her heart racing, but her head held high. Rebecca was already there, looking like a shadow of the confident and intimidating woman she used to be. "Mary," Rebecca began, her voice surprisingly soft, "thank you for agreeing to meet with me." What followed was a surprisingly frank conversation. Rebecca admitted her mistakes, explained the pressures and insecurities that had led her to act in such a destructive way. Mary, in turn, shared how Rebecca's actions had affected not just her, but the entire hotel staff. At the end of the meeting, they reached an agreement that satisfied both parties. Rebecca would withdraw all accusations and make a public statement clarifying the situation. In exchange, Mary would not proceed with the countersuit, allowing Rebecca to maintain a chance to rebuild her career elsewhere. When Mary left the meeting, she felt strangely light. It wasn't just the relief of seeing the case coming to an end, but a deeper sense that a cycle had been completed. That night at home, Mary, Richard, and Sophie celebrated with a special dinner. As she watched the two beings she loved most in the world laughing and talking, Mary felt a wave of gratitude so intense it almost left her breathless. "Is everything okay, love?" Richard asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. Mary smiled, tears of happiness shining in her eyes. "Everything is perfect. I just never imagined my life could be like this, so full, so complete." Sophie, perceiving her mother's emotion, ran to hug her. "I love you, Mommy," she said simply. Richard joined the embrace, enveloping them both. "We're a family," he said softly, "and nothing and no one will change that." In that moment, surrounded by the love of her family, Mary knew with certainty that no matter what challenges the future might bring, she was ready to face them. With Richard by her side, Sophie as her guiding light, and the strength she had discovered in herself, there was nothing she couldn't overcome. The path that had brought her here had been long and often painful, but each step, each obstacle, had been necessary to lead her to this moment of pure happiness. And as the sun set outside, painting the sky with shades of pink and gold, Mary hugged her family tighter, grateful for every moment that had led her to this new beginning. The months following the agreement with Rebecca brought a long-awaited peace to Mary's life. The Ocean Star Hotel flourished under her leadership, with guest and employee satisfaction levels reaching record highs. Her relationship with Richard grew stronger by the day, and Sophie seemed happier than ever. On a sunny Saturday afternoon, as they strolled through the park, Richard surprised Mary and Sophie with an unexpected proposal. "What do you think about taking a trip?" he asked, a gleam of excitement in his eyes. Sophie immediately became animated. "Yes, where are we going?" Richard smiled, exchanging a complicit look with Mary. "Well, I was thinking of something a little different. How about a trip across America? We could visit some of the chain's hotels in different states." Mary looked at him surprised. "But what about work and Sophie's school?" "I've already thought about that," Richard explained. "We can turn this into a kind of inspection tour. You could share your management experiences with the other units. As for Sophie, we could arrange private tutoring during the trip. It would be an incredible educational experience for her." The idea began to take shape in Mary's mind. It was bold, different from anything they had ever done, but at the same time incredibly tempting. "What do you think, Sophie?" Mary asked, carefully observing her daughter's reaction. Sophie's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Can we see the ocean and the forest and the mountains?" Richard laughed. "All that and much more, Princess." Mary felt a mix of emotions, enthusiasm, apprehension, expectation. "Well," she finally said, a smile forming on her lips, "I guess we have a trip to plan." The following weeks were a whirlwind of preparations. At the hotel, Mary worked tirelessly to ensure everything would be in order during her absence. Charlie was appointed interim manager, a decision that was met with unanimous approval from the team. "Don't worry," Charlie reassured her. "We'll take care of everything here. You deserve this time with your family." The eve of departure arrived faster than expected. As they packed, Mary couldn't help but feel a pang of anxiety. "What if something goes wrong at the hotel?" she asked Richard, nervously folding a blouse. Richard approached, enveloping her in a comforting hug. "Mary, you've built an amazing team. They are more than capable of handling anything that comes up. Besides," he added with a smile, "you'll be just a video call away." His words calmed Mary's nerves. She took a deep breath, finally allowing herself to feel the excitement of the adventure that awaited them. The next morning, they departed for their first destination, Miami. Sophie was glued to the airplane window, marveling at the view of the clouds and, later, at the spectacle of the magic city revealing itself below them. The days in Miami were magical. Between visits to the local hotel and meetings with the staff, they found time to explore the beaches, visit attractions, and marvel at the vibrant culture. Sophie absorbed each new experience with contagious enthusiasm, filling her travel journal with drawings and observations. From there, they headed to the northeast, exploring the historic charm of Boston. Mary was impressed with the boutique hotel of the chain, perfectly integrated into the historic architecture. During a walk through the Freedom Trail, observing Sophie's wonder at the stories of the American Revolution, she felt a deeper connection with her country's history than she had ever experienced before. The journey continued, taking them to the West Coast with its stunning landscapes, to the Midwest with the impressive Great Lakes, and finally to the mountains where they explored the beauty of the Rockies. At each stop, Mary not only inspected the hotels, but also shared her experiences and learnings. She was surprised to realize how much she had grown professionally over the last few years, and how her ideas were valued and implemented in other units of the chain. For Sophie, the trip was a living lesson in geography, history, and science. Her tutor, hired to accompany them, skillfully integrated daily experiences into the school curriculum. The girl flourished, her natural curiosity fed by each new discovery. Richard, for his part, observed with pride and love the growth of both. He saw in Mary not just the woman he loved, but an inspiring leader who positively transformed each place she went. One night, as they dined at a restaurant overlooking Niagara Falls, Richard surprised Mary yet again. "I have something to ask." "You," he said, his voice trembling slightly with nervousness. Mary looked at him curious as he took a small box from his pocket. Her heart raced as she realized what was about to happen. Richard knelt beside the table, opening the box to reveal a beautiful ring. "Mary Davis, these months traveling with you and Sophie have only confirmed what I already knew. I want to spend the rest of my life by your side. Would you do me the honor of marrying me?" Tears of happiness sprang to Mary's eyes. She looked at Sophie, who was watching the scene with a huge smile, and then back at Richard. "Yes," she answered, her voice choked with emotion. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." As Richard slipped the ring onto her finger, their lips met in a kiss full of promise and love. Sophie clapped excitedly, then rushed to join them in a group hug. That night, after putting an exhausted Sophie to bed, Mary and Richard sat on the hotel room balcony, hand in hand, gazing at the stars. "I never thought I could be this happy," Mary confessed, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. "After everything that happened, all the struggles, it seemed impossible." Richard brought her hand to his lips, kissing it gently. "You deserve all the happiness in the world, Mary, you and Sophie, and I promise to spend the rest of my life trying to give you that." Mary leaned her head on his shoulder, a deep contentment settling in her heart. The journey they had embarked on, not just the physical trip across the country, but the journey of their lives together, had brought them to this perfect moment. Tomorrow, they would continue their adventure, visiting more cities, exploring more wonders. But tonight, under the vast starry sky, they celebrated the greatest adventure of all, the journey of love that had brought them together and would lead them into a shared future filled with promise and joy. The wedding preparations began as soon as they returned from their trip. Mary, who had once thought she would never have a fairy tale wedding, found herself swept up in a whirlwind of dresses, flowers, and venue hunting. Sophie threw herself into the role of junior wedding planner with gusto, her creative ideas bringing smiles to everyone involved. One evening, as Mary sat at the kitchen table surrounded by wedding magazines and sample invitations, Richard approached with 2 glasses of wine. "Taking a break?" he asked, placing the glass in front of her. Mary sighed, leaning back in her chair. "I never imagined wedding planning could be so exhausting," she admitted with a small laugh. "But Sophie is having so much fun, I can't help but get caught up in her enthusiasm." Richard sat beside her, taking her hand. "You know, we could always elope," he suggested with a mischievous twinkle in his eye. "Just the 3 of us, somewhere beautiful and quiet." Mary considered it for a moment, tempted by the simplicity of the idea. "Sophie would never forgive us," she finally said, laughing. "She's been practicing her flower girl walk for weeks." Richard joined in her laughter, then grew more serious. "As long as I get to marry you, the details don't matter to me. Big wedding, small wedding, courthouse ceremony, I just want to make you my wife." The sincerity in his voice touched Mary deeply. She leaned forward, kissing him softly. "I feel the same way. But I think we both deserve a day to celebrate with everyone we care about. After everything we've been through, it feels right to share our happiness." The months leading up to the wedding were not without challenges. The hotel chain was expanding, with Richard spending more time traveling to scout new locations. Mary's responsibilities at the Ocean Star increased as the hotel's reputation soared under her management. Balancing work, wedding planning, and family time required constant juggling. Yet through it all, they maintained their connection, making sure to carve out special moments for just the 3 of them. Friday movie nights became sacred, a time when work was set aside and phones were silenced. Sophie thrived in this environment of stability and love, her once fragile health now robust, her academic performance stellar. 2 weeks before the wedding, Mary received an unexpected email. It was from Peter, Sophie's father. He had seen the engagement announcement in the local paper and wanted to congratulate her. At the end of the email, he asked a question that left Mary staring at her screen in shock. Would she consider allowing him to see Sophie? Mary's first instinct was a firm no. Peter had abandoned them when Sophie was barely a year old, showing no interest in his daughter's life for years. The thought of him disrupting the happiness they had found with Richard made her blood boil. But as her initial anger subsided, Mary found herself conflicted. Didn't Sophie have a right to know her biological father? What would it mean for her daughter to reject this connection without even consulting her? That night, after Sophie was asleep, Mary showed the email to Richard. She watched his face carefully as he read, afraid of seeing jealousy or resentment. Instead, he looked up with compassion in his eyes. "This is a big decision," he said softly. "How do you feel about it?" Mary sat beside him on the couch, her emotions tumultuous. "Part of me wants to delete the email and pretend it never arrived. He gave up the right to be in Sophie's life when he walked out on us. But another part wonders if I'm being selfish, if Sophie would resent me someday for keeping her father from her." Richard pulled her close, his presence a comfort. "I don't think there's a perfect answer here, but I know you'll make the decision that's best for Sophie, and whatever you decide, I'm with you 100%. His unwavering support gave Mary the strength to think clearly. After much reflection, she decided to meet with Peter alone first, before involving Sophie. If his intentions seemed genuine, if he was truly ready to be a positive presence in Sophie's life, then perhaps a carefully managed reunion could be arranged. The meeting took place at a neutral coffee shop. Mary arrived early, her nerves on edge. When Peter walked in, she was struck by how ordinary he looked, neither the villain she had sometimes made him out to be in her darkest moments, nor the charming young man who had once swept her off her feet. Just a middle-aged man with regret etched into the lines of his face. Their conversation was awkward at first, years of unspoken words hanging between them. Peter spoke of his journey since leaving, his struggles with addiction, the therapy that had finally helped him face his demons, his slow climb toward becoming a person he could respect. He showed Mary photos of his new family, a wife who knew his past and 2 stepchildren he was helping to raise. "I don't expect to waltz back into Sophie's life as if nothing happened," he said, his voice sincere. "I know I'm a stranger to her. I want the chance to know my daughter, even a little, to let her know I didn't leave because of her." Mary listened, searching for any hint of deception or ulterior motive. Finding none, she made a cautious decision. "I'll talk to Sophie. If she's open to meeting you, we can arrange something small, supervised. But Peter," her voice grew firm, "this has to be on her terms. If at any point she's uncomfortable or doesn't want to continue, that's it." Peter agreed readily, gratitude evident in his eyes. "Thank you, Mary. You've built a beautiful life for her. I've seen the pictures in the papers. She looks so happy with you and Richard. I'm not trying to disrupt that, I promise." 2 days later, Mary sat Sophie down for a gentle conversation about Peter. She explained who he was, why he had been absent, and that he wanted to meet her. She was careful to present the facts without bias, allowing Sophie to form her own feelings. Sophie's reaction surprised her. Instead of the anger or confusion Mary had feared, her daughter was simply curious. "Does he like space too?" she asked, referring to her current obsession with astronomy. "Does he know I'm going to be in a wedding soon?" Mary marveled at children's resilience, their capacity for forgiveness unburdened by adult complications. "I don't know if he likes space, sweetie, but you can ask him if you want to meet him." Sophie thought for a moment, then nodded. "I think I'd like to meet him, just to see." The meeting was arranged for the following weekend, a brief lunch at a restaurant with a playground. Richard offered to come along for moral support, but Mary felt it was important for this first encounter to be just the 3 of them. The lunch went better than Mary could have hoped. Peter was nervous but genuine, answering Sophie's rapid-fire questions with patience and humor. Sophie, for her part, showed none of the shyness she sometimes exhibited with strangers, seemingly fascinated by this new person who shared her curly hair and love of cherry ice cream. By the time they said goodbye, with a tentative plan to meet again after the wedding, Mary felt a weight lift from her shoulders. This new development, which she had initially feared would complicate their lives, instead felt like the closing of a circle. One more piece of their past finding its proper place as they moved toward their future. The night before the wedding, as Mary tucked Sophie into bed, her daughter looked up with serious eyes. "Mommy, after tomorrow, will Richard be my real dad?" Mary sat on the edge of the bed, smoothing Sophie's curls. "Well, legally he'll be your stepfather, but in all the ways that really matter, yes, he'll be your dad. He already loves you like a daughter." Sophie nodded, satisfied. "Good. I already have a Peter, but I need a dad too." Mary's heart swelled with love for this wise little person. "You're pretty lucky, you know that? Some kids have one person who loves them, and you have so many." Sophie grinned, her gap-toothed smile still endearing even as her adult teeth continued to fill in. "I know, I'm the luckiest kid in the whole wide world." As Mary kissed her goodnight and tiptoed from the room, she reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From that night of exhaustion at the hotel reception desk to tomorrow's walk down the aisle, every step, even the painful ones, had been necessary. Without the struggles, the fear, the moments of despair, they might never have found their way to this abundance of love. The wedding day dawned clear and bright, as if nature itself was celebrating with them. Mary stood before the mirror in her simple but elegant gown, her mother adjusting the veil with tears in her eyes. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," her mother said, voice thick with emotion. "I'm so proud of the woman you've become, of the mother you are. Your father would have been so proud too." Mary hugged her mother tightly, grateful for her unwavering support through all the difficult years. "Thank you, Mom, for everything." Knock at the door revealed Sophie, resplendent in her flower girl dress, bouncing with excitement. "Mommy, it's almost time. Richard says his heart is doing somersaults in his chest." "Is that even possible?" Mary laughed, kneeling to her daughter's level. "When you love someone very much, it certainly feels possible." As the music began and Mary prepared to walk down the aisle, She took a deep breath. Ahead of her, Sophie scattered rose petals with dramatic flair, drawing chuckles from the assembled guests. And at the end of the aisle stood Richard, his eyes filled with such love that Mary felt her own heart doing somersaults. Step by step, she moved toward her future, toward the family they had built together, not from obligation or circumstance, but from choice, from love, from the recognition of something precious found amid life's chaos. "Ready?" Richard whispered as she reached his side. Mary smiled, taking his hand. More than ready. And as they spoke their vows, surrounded by friends and family, Mary knew that this was not the end of their story, but the beginning of a new chapter, one they would write together, day by day, with all the courage and love they had found in each other.